Hey everyone, giving folks like 30 more seconds to jump on and we'll get into it. Hope you're having a lovely Thursday. Start to August. Let's see, got 14 of us. Okay, cool. Awesome. Well, we are recording. So we know that folks were in the middle of final presentations for some internships and such. So also it just serves as a good resource to return to and reference again. But everyone, happy August. We're excited to be with you today. You know, everyone's internship experience looks a little bit different. Many of you are in the season of wrapping up your summer internships and could be exploring full-time possibilities with either these organizations or maybe getting ready to start looking for job opportunities this coming fall. But whatever the timing is for you, we feel it's really good to have some tools at the ready to help you understand and what you should be thinking about as you evaluate a job offer. So today, I just wanted to share with you some advice and tips about looking strategically at a job offer and understanding how and when to go about negotiating your offer so that's most beneficial for you and your situation. But this doesn't have to be a session where I just talk at you, right, and take up the questions at the end. If you have a question while we're on certain slides, use the chat function or just raise your hand and we'll get to you for sure. But to get into it. So why negotiate? So of course, you don't have to negotiate a job offer, but it's helpful to remember reasons why it's advantageous to have these conversations. Everyone spends so much time in their lives at their place of work. And because of this, we should make sure that our job and our workplace is aligned with who we are and what we need to be most successful. So you all bring so much value because of the skills and experiences that you've had and that are unique to just you, which means that you deserve to make your wants and needs known in a way that makes sense and connects with the employer. Another reason would be to negotiate an offer is because American culture can put so much focus on the salary component of your job, right? Employers can make assumptions when they look at your salary, whether that's about your work productivity or they associate a higher salary with perhaps leadership potential. As well, an offer you receive may not be consistent with the industry research that you've conducted. And so you may want to go back to the employer with that information to strengthen your request for a better offer. You can also find that there are certain important elements of your job that may be missing in your offer. And lastly, a lot of employers already expect that a negotiation conversation is going to happen as part of the job offer process. So in evaluating the big picture of your offer, in the past, whether I've had one offer on the table or multiple, I've used different tools, something like this, a matrix, to help cross-compare one organization to another. Sometimes it is hard to wrap your head around the big picture. But when you realize that, oh, this certain company has a great work-life balance and actually contributes to my retirement at a great rate each month, that might technically be more valuable to you than the extra week of vacation that another organization may be offering, right? We'll get into what many of these aspects are that you'll see on the screen, but just know that visually mapping out the entirety of your offer and what the job would bring to your life is really important as you consider your other options. Now, there are several key actions we recommend to take whenever you receive a job offer. First, right, showing sincere gratitude for the offer, showing appreciation for the opportunity, and just reiterating your interest in the company and in the position. Second, requesting any additional information that could be missing, right? Did they mention a signing bonus anywhere? Who would be covering relocation costs if that makes sense to your situation? Getting this info is important to get clarified up front, and that's going to help you consider the entire offer package. And then finally, making sure that you receive the offer in writing. So often there are additional details regarding the offer that are included in a formal letter. These details are really important for you to review and evaluate as you fully understand what a whole offer is providing you. A common question that you could have after receiving a job offer is how to manage the decision-making timeline. So you should be sure to ask them when a decision is needed, and when you know that, we recommend the following steps. So find and schedule a time to discuss the details of your offer with the employer before the date of your final decision being due. Communicating with any other companies that you're interviewing with or waiting decisions from. If you're still in the process with other companies, we recommend that you let them know that you've received an offer from another company. And you can ask for an extension if you need one to the decision deadline. But keep in mind, you should only try to do this once. Typical extensions range from a few days up to 2 weeks, depending on the employer and the position that you would be being offered. Now, as you think about like what a flow of a negotiation is going to look like, in a simple way, it's just four easy things. You're going to do work to prepare for a conversation. You're going to then meet with the employer. Second, you'll open the conversation, just begin laying out your requests and why. Then third comes the bargaining phase, right? So you can highlight certain things that you're asking for that are higher priorities than others. Something like, although these are all very important requests that I feel are appropriate for the skills and experience that I would bring to the table, I think it's very important that I have access to the additional travel benefits or something because of the long commute time that I'm going to have each day, whatever situation may be. And then last, you're going to close the negotiation on your side of the conversation. Again, right, expressing that appreciation that you have for the offer and what potential great things that you can see in the role, at which point the employer that would then respond to your requests. But before getting into the nuts and bolts of having the conversation, let's take a step back and understanding how to prepare for the conversation. So what could be negotiable? There could be multiple things that you could consider negotiating based on their importance to you and your situation. Some folks just focus on the finances part, ensuring that salary is coming in at the same average rate as others in the industry. Some want to be able to chat through their duties and responsibilities, maybe adding specific experiences that'll help you achieve your long-term goals. For others, it's all about the work environment and making sure that things like professional development is encouraged, or explore perks for the on-site facilities, or even chat around the organization's stance on remote or hybrid work. Here's not a fully exhaustive list, but a pretty big list of things that you could consider as potentially on the table as you prep for a negotiation conversation. And we'll go deeper into these for sure. Around, do you have to negotiate? Now, this is the part where I usually get a few people feeling hesitant and saying, do I need to do this? It sounds risky, and you're not wrong. All negotiations do involve risk, but on the flip side, not negotiating also involves risk. The chance of leaving a better package or situation on the table by not exploring the possibility with your new potential employer. Upfront reasons for negotiating, though, right? An offer could be way lower compared to the industry-wide average that you've found through your own research. Maybe certain benefits or job elements aren't included with the offer that you've received and that you think are really important. And if you're fortunate to have multiple offers, right, you can find that other offers on the table currently have a better package overall, and you're trying to see if others can match that. But what if you only have one offer? The process would be exactly the same if you have one offer in hand or three. You still have the same wants and needs, regardless of the numbers of offers that you've been given. So you should still be preparing to present your points with that same confidence as if you have another offer. You're not forced just to accept an offer, right? You could have other opportunities that you value and want to pursue, right? So really pushing to get what you need and want on the table is really important through this process. So we're first going to talk about what parts of the offer you may want to consider negotiating, a deeper dive into that list that I just showed you. Right. So when most people think about the negotiating process, they think about the monetary compensation first. So here, your overall compensation could consist of a number of different elements, right? There's your base salary. When you negotiate your offer, there's generally some room to negotiate a higher base salary, depending on the type of organization it is, company to nonprofit, whatever it may be. This should always be your top priority, though, in my mind, because future salary increases always tend to be based on some percentage of that initial figure. Now, many offers could come in with a sign-on bonus, right? That could be negotiable in some cases, depending on the size of organization. You could also be able to negotiate when your next merit review occurs so that you're eligible for increases before the annual review process could take place. Some companies also offer compensation in the form of stock options, or many companies would help pay for the cost of relocation. All of these can be fair game in the negotiation process based on the size of the organization, their resources. But again, this depends on you kind of doing your research and understanding what the company has had to offer. There are other aspects of your total compensation package that you can keep in mind as well. Other companies offer employees the option to participate in savings and retirement plans. Some offer assistance with tuition and student loans if you're deciding to go on and get a doctorate or whatever it may be as well, tuition reimbursement. But before moving on, something to also be mindful of is what I would call expensive money. So what I mean here is that a higher salary is not necessarily a better deal all the time. You may think that one job offer is higher because the salary is more. but this isn't always the case. So I've had past students come to me with their offers in the past to review. And when we looked at them, that the employment contracts in more detail of the higher salary offer, there were just so many more overtime hours kind of baked into the salary, some that were explicit and some that were just implicit by knowing the company culture. So doing some calculations, we found that the lower paying salary ended up paying more per hour in the grand context of the total work. And so this is what we can call expensive money, right? Where the work you do demands excessive time, effort, and stress. The salary may sound nice, but the intangibles could come at a cost depending on where you're at in your life stage. And most companies won't write any overtime expectations into their offers, but they simply hire you for salary, and then that's where you do give your time and balance that work-life balance as things continue. So things to think about as you're looking at the monetary side of things. In terms of lifestyle, right? You may be able to negotiate additional vacation time, for example, or a flexible start date. More and more companies are offering their employees greater flexibility in where you work. A hybrid situation, fully remote. Nope, we're just in the office. Some companies maybe even provide assistance for spouses or significant others finding employment in new cities if you are moving. All good things to consider when you are making your final decision. As terms of career path and responsibilities, it's also important to think about the overall work environment. You're going to be spending the majority of the week at your job, so all of these are really important things to consider. But think about the offer in terms of the impact that it could have in your career. So be comfortable with the level of responsibility that you'll be taking on your new position, as well as the types of projects that you'll be assigned. You should also think about different opportunities that will be available in your own training and professional development down the road. Geographic location is something to consider, as cost of living can vary by region, as well as career opportunities. Finally, travel requirements should be evaluated, right? Understanding upfront how much travel will be expected in your new role, if any, and carefully considering the impact for your career and life goals with that in the mix. And then lastly, some other perks to consider, right? You may know of these through info chats you've had with folks in the organization or just website research, but may not be part of the formal offer letter, right? So what sort of on-site services are there? An employee cafeteria, daycare, an on-site gym, dry cleaning even. What sort of office layout is there? Kind of nuanced details, but important things that do fit into the overall package that you should have clarity on and do make a difference over time, right? So now that you know what you want, right, by going through some of these things and understanding where your priorities lie, you really need to prepare by knowing the information about the job market and what you can do to bring things to the table for the employer. So if you are trying to negotiate for something like a higher salary or additional benefits, it's important to know what other people in the same role or others in your industry are being paid. There are many ways of looking about this. A good start is by understanding some statistics that you may have already at the ready. So if you're asking for a higher salary, you can say, I'm asking for this salary in part because the average median salary for this role across the industry is X. Make sure that you figure out what your rock bottom, your level, mid-level, and your ideal salary figures are to have at the ready. And make sure you keep the employer interest in mind, right? So are they a smaller company and might not be able to meet those salary ideal requirements that you're asking for? Or even looking at the company, I know that X company really focuses on the well-being of its employees. I really value opportunities to give back and volunteer while representing my company. So that's why I'm requesting, for example, an extra week of paid leave so I can volunteer for food banks or something in my community, things like that. And you can let's see here. You can also mentally prepare for personal highlights for your conversation, right? Of yourself. You'll want to remind the employer of your accomplishments and your successes, time that you've really navigated tough, similar situations. And so you can let your track record really shine for itself, right? This is another moment for you to sell yourself. You can also have your education highlights at the ready to lean on and even reference a past salary figure that you've maybe made in the past to highlight some credibility there. So in doing your homework, if you decide to negotiate some aspect of your offer, it's important to have all the necessary data kind of in front of you to support your request for more than what has been offered. Salary statistics I found can be, easily found on useful websites like the ones you'll see on the right-hand side of the slide here. I know that for myself in previous negotiation discussions, Glassdoor and PayScale have both been very useful websites that have given me both strong data on salary requirements, on job types, and insight into what the norm has been for others across the industry, based on the size of the organization and such. But also for industries, just for company information in general, I've also used personal contacts and online resources to figure out what's appropriate to be asking for, and to better understand the company's perspective or approach to certain things. I'm assuming your career centers in grad school will also have some good lists to send you to for industry-wide information, whether it's in your region or nationwide. But also very important is the cost of living resources. So if you're living in New Mexico right now, but your new role is in New York City, that's going to be a very significant shift for you. And you're going to want to do that homework to understand here. You're going to justify the request for an increased salary because of the drastic difference in everyday cost between these two places. So now that you've done the homework to be prepared for for the negotiation conversation, let's dive into how this could play out. So first and foremost, planning the conversation in advance is so important. You should be practicing this conversation several times, role-playing it to get the best feel for the conversation, whether with a trusted colleague or another PPNV fellow, a mentor, a friend, right? This practice can be very helpful and makes really the difference between having a great and confident negotiation conversation or one that kind of just falls flat and unsuccessful. Also important to note that employers expect to have these discussions live, right? So either by phone or face-to-face or Zoom. Never attempt to negotiate an offer via email. Lastly, remember to start the discussion with appreciation and be mindful of your tone throughout the conversation. When it's time to have this important conversation with an employer, I would outline your request one at a time. And if you're asking for an increase, say to the base salary, I would do that first, and then back up your request with the information to support it. And then if there are additional aspects you want to negotiate, right, then I would move on to those other elements of the offer after tackling the salary piece to discuss or confirm. During the conversation, you may also decide to accept or decline the newer existing terms. You should also thank them, right, for the conversation, being willing and open to talk about this with you. But if you're not ready to communicate your decision, and at the end of the conversation, let them know that you'll still do so by the agreed upon deadline. And of course, if any changes are made to your offer during the conversation, I would request an updated offer letter that would reflect those changes you discussed, so that's in writing. But once you've communicated your needs and desires, you might need to give the employer an opportunity to respond. That could take time, right? They may not have the final authority to make you a better offer there. So, once the employer comes back to you with a response, you should consider the negotiation process more or less over. I would avoid a series of counteroffers and never introduce new terms or requests after your initial negotiation discussion. It's really important to remember that they have needs and interests as well in being representatives of the company. So you need to be prepared to kind of meet them somewhere in the middle. There are things that you may encounter that they could say, right? So to help you get ready for this important discussion, here are some typical things, some pushback from employers that I've had students, tell me that they've heard in the past, right? I would try to just look at some of these things and be prepared to have some sort of response should you find yourself in this situation around, we don't negotiate, we do pay market price for standard in the industry. Do you have any other offers, right? Some of these are like, oh gosh, do I kind of divulge? Do I not, right? This is where you kind of stay true to yourself and choose that graceful approach and saying like, I have been or I have not been, pursuing other opportunities with other companies and still in the process, or okay, that makes sense that you pay market price, based on the research I did and XYZ. This is what my data shows. So it shows that you're doing your homework too, right? There's a reason you're asking maybe for an increase to what you're asking for, but some things to think about. An important piece of it that we don't want to leave out as well is what it looks like when you are negotiating too much, which is a definite no-no in the job offer process. You can't come back with other requests, right? And having a back and forth on the offer is not possible. You need to also listen to and try to empathize with the needs of the company, as I mentioned, and understand why it could be a struggle for them to offer you the full package you're wanting, right? You never want to say something like, give me what I'm requesting or I'm walking. That's a terrible way to harm your reputation. And lastly, don't be bringing in other offer details, right? I would never say something like, well, I'm being offered a $10,000 signing bonus here. Like, what are you going to do for me, right? It's about graciously accepting the offer at hand and just seeing if there's anything they can do from their end to kind of justify and up the offer. There's definitely a more tactful way to talk about multiple offers and encourage a competitive response without either seeming like you're bragging or divulging a lot of various different offer details. So after all this, right, you're ready to accept the position. Congratulations. Now you would need to verbally or in writing, though it's common to do both, accept the role. Usually it's either something you sign and send back in your offer letter, or simply writing an email acceptance to the offer and then calling the HR rep or the organization rep and accepting verbally as well. If you accepted or if you negotiated any part of the offer in a way that made it change, right? Make sure that offer letter that you sign and return to the employer does incorporate any of the changes you have discussed in your conversation. Something that does get left out often that I've talked to students in the past is like start dates or adding another week of vacation or whatever it may be. Some things that could seem small because the salary remains the same, but you want to make sure that everybody's details are lining up the correct way. I know none of you will do this, but it's also important to know it's highly unprofessional to go back on an offer after you've accepted it. And there could be really unexpected consequences. Once you've accepted either verbally or in writing, you're more or less committed. And at this point, you should really cease all interview and negotiation activities with any other companies you may be pursuing things with and just focus your energy on stepping into your new job. If you are in a position to turn down a job offer, we would recommend things like, if you're accepting another offer, be certain that those details are set first. I would mention that another opportunity was just a better fit for this stage of your career. You're welcome to say why that is, respond verbally and not just via email, right? Even though it could be a tough conversation, and follow up in writing. I would remain really appreciative, positive, and professional throughout the interactions that you'll have with them. You never know when your paths are going to cross again. I actually had this happen to me when I was in graduate school. So I got multiple internship offers and I went with a particular one for the summer, didn't have the experience that I would want in a full-time role. So I ended up recruiting with one of the companies that I turned down and ended up working for them full-time for the next 2 years before coming here to Globally. So important to know that to keep those lines of communication open. So in summary of advice, right, first and foremost, always expressing your enthusiasm, your sincere interest in the position in the company, remembering that you shouldn't feel any pressure to accept any offer immediately and just take a moment, breathe, right, feel good for getting an offer, and then making sure that you get any additions to an offer that you may negotiate included in a formal letter or an offer addendum. If you're successful in negotiating what you ask for, then you need to be prepared to accept or reject the offer based on that info. There's no going back to ask for more after that, right? Be sure to think about what the long term could look like, right? Too many people just focus on the base salary and signing bonuses when evaluating their offers and forget about other important criteria that could lead to a better lifestyle, right? Work-life balance. Finally, just have confidence in yourself, right? You have a strong set of skills and experiences that you bring to the table that make them to want you, right? They ultimately want you to accept the offer. So put your best foot forward. And that's really the advice we have for you here as you may be stepping into the job recruiting season. So are there any questions about anything that we've covered or any thoughts that you have?
I had a quick question.
Yeah.
How do you negotiate when a company puts the salary range on the job posting? If they say, let's say like it's going to be between 60 and 70.
Sure.
Are they saying that maybe 70 is going to be the max, and then you shouldn't really negotiate past that, or would you still try to negotiate?
I think it depends. I mean, I think it's dependent if you are recruiting directly with the company or you're recruiting with like a recruiting agency. If you're recruiting directly with the company, right? Oftentimes they'll say this range is based on experience, right? And so you're gonna chat with them and hopefully get to that final round where you talk about these things and say, I'm looking. I know that the range is between X and X. You've done your research on that's in line or not in line with industry standards. Even if you're asking for, so say it's 60 to 70, you want to come in at 75, I'd say, I really have done this for 6 years and you're asking for 3 years experience. Here's a portfolio of things that I have done that I can show you, reasons that I can, I think it would be worth moving up to 75, or maybe additional skills or certifications that you bring that they're not asking for. So this is where I would just take it upon myself to kind of sell myself even more and say, look at what you have in this candidate, perhaps. Now, if you're open, right? Sometimes when I'm looking for a role or something, right? I say, even if it's lower than what I want, I say, hey, just to be transparent, like that's a little lower than what I'm looking for, but I am really looking for the best overall fit and package. That showing that willingness to kind of meet them where they're at and take their needs and what they've maybe budgeted in their organization to account, can oftentimes lead to like maybe them helping you out in some other sort of way. Ernesto, I'm going to send out these slides for sure, and the recording. Yep. Alex, does that give you a sense, or do you want me to go deeper in anything?
No, that's good. Thank you.
Cool. Eric, so you said in chat, what are your thoughts on asking for a higher salary than a salary range? Okay, gotcha. Yep, we chatted that. Any other questions relevant to job offers, kind of getting through the interview process?
Yes, I have one question.
Yeah, what's up?
So let's say you are in the actual process of negotiating, and you mentioned it before, you do not want to give too much details on like other offer letters you got in depth, but prior to, you mentioned that like you can reference that you did receive an offer. Like, how do you go about like showing that you did get an offer without diving into the like specifics of what that offer entails?
Very, very tactically, right? So if I'm starting a negotiation discussion, and I'm saying, it depends what your personality is, right? So say that like the place that you really want to work is offering you maybe lower than what you would like it to come into, right? Based on another offer you have or something. And so like, if that place is your first choice, like I'd let them know, like, hey, thank you so much for taking the time to chat with me through this offer. I'm super stoked that you guys extended an offer to me. Really appreciative of the work that I would be doing here. I would love to see myself working in XYZ projects. And, the thing is, I just want to be fully transparent. Like, you are my first choice when it comes to my postgraduate plans, and I would love to start working for you. There are a few things that I do want to cover in today's negotiation discussion, and I also want to be transparent that I do have other offers on the table. You could say one, you could say multiple, you could say offers in general. I wouldn't go into like who it's with or anything like that. I would just kind of leave it at that, right? You're letting them know that like you could be off the market with other offers on the table. And then I would dive into, if it's okay with you, we can, dive into some of these aspects. Are there any questions you have before we get started? No. Okay, cool. And then go into that, right? So it's just like I don't know, it's not a humble brag, but it's just like a subtle, like, I do have this. I want you to know that I have this, but I'm not going to give you a lot of information because I'm not trying to be a jerk about things. Yeah. Aubrey or Clara, any additional thoughts of things that that we went over so far, or tips and tricks in your own experience?
No, I think, from my own experience, I've joined organizations that have been less flexible in the negotiation. And I think like that's also a reality. Sometimes you can ask, come back and say, I would really appreciate having a discussion about salary or time off. And they'll say, we go by these categories, or like the GS scale if it's government, and
Yeah.
there's just no wiggle room. And that's, that's also a possibility.
Yeah, that's 100% true. Yes, I'm glad you brought that up. And that's the thing, right? It's like you are showing appreciation for the offer. You're asking if the offer is open to negotiation, and if it's not, that's just how it is. And then, based on the layout of the benefit structure or whatever they're bringing to the table in the offer, it's you making that choice. It's a yes or a no for you based on where you're at in your life stage and situation.
Yeah, just going off that, I think the worst, you just have to think of it like the worst they can say is no. And if
Sure.
that's the case, then you can figure out if that's what's right for you and if you need to move on. And if not, then all right.
Yeah. At the end of the day, I think, and studies show this too, like people of color don't oftentimes ask for what they need, what they want. And so by being able to arm you with either kind of like examples, tips and tricks, at least you'll say, at least you'll be able to ask those questions. And if you hear no in response, like you've done what you can to ask for what you feel that you deserve. So Eric says, to help ensure pay equity, is it appropriate to ask how your offer compares to others in the same similar role in the org? So that's sticky. It can be sticky. I think it depends on the org for sure. I know that HR reps are going to be keep that close to the book, but I know that if you do informational coffee chats with some folks in the organization, they're more likely and willing to say like, yeah, the range that I've seen is probably X to X, or even be, fully transparent of, yeah, I came on board and they started me at X and I've moved up, to where I am now to X. I've seen it both ways. I know that if you're dealing with the HR reps though, they're going to keep that pretty confidential. This is where I tend to rely on Glassdoor pretty heavily, especially if they're a more well-known organization. They tend to have more accurate salary ranges, especially for different locations across the US. So that's probably how I'd say that there. Any other questions?
You mentioned Glassdoor. Is there any other places you would look?
So PayScale is another really good one. I've used those two for sure. There's another one. What is it? Transparentcareer.com. It used to have a paywall. The last time I logged on, it did not have a paywall. It was really good for just kind of giving lists of salary information to use as benchmarks. Especially, as you're relating to the top companies in a certain metro area. So I know the Humphrey School has used that in the past, Carlson as well. And then for the cost of living, right, monstermoving.com has been pretty helpful in saying, okay, I'm going to make X here, I'm moving here. Like, what would the salary difference need to be for me to kind of make that same amount as I'm just moving to a new location? And so what I usually do is I will come into an offer negotiation with kind of like 2 or 3 papers, especially if it's virtual, right? Or phone call, just like 2 or 3 things, papers on my desk of like, this is what I'm asking for, this is why. Just very clear. That way, when you get on the telephone, sometimes you kind of like tense up and you're scared, or it's a nervous conversation. It doesn't always happen very calm and fluid. So I kind of like give myself a roadmap of saying, appreciation for the offer. Hey, thank you so much. As you mentioned, we're going to just chat through 2 or 3 things that I just think are really important today. Any questions you have before getting started? Okay, boom, boom, boom. Evidence why, personal reasons why. It could be that the salary information to benchmark. It could be your personal experiences, and then giving them a chance to say, "Yep, that's all I have. What are your thoughts? What are your reactions?" And it could be, "Yes, we can do that." Or it could be, I'm going to need to get back to you. Give me 24, 48 hours. It could be, we're going to have to send some chain of command. I'll probably get back to you next week. Heard all 3. And it could be just simple like that, totally understand why you're asking for this. Makes sense, but we just can't do that at this time. Would you still be interested in the role as the offer stands? And sometimes that's how it is a lot of times. Alex, great resource there. Yep, LinkedIn has salary insights too. For their job postings, I've noticed that LinkedIn doesn't tend to put a lot of the listings on there for salary ranges, but I do know they have their Salary Insights tool is functional and people use that as well. Yeah. Any last questions?
I would also say that I just negotiated for a position,
Cool.
and it's remote. So things like for something like me who likes to go in somewhere, I asked if I could get a WeWork like membership
Nice.
so that I
Yeah.
can go in. And so things like that. So things like that you may not even think, that doesn't necessarily, you should keep it broad and just really think
Yep.
about what would work for you. Like if maybe you want a new desk or something, things like that.
Yep.
You're like,
100%. Yep, whatever's going to give you whatever's practical, right? You're not asking for a yacht, you're asking for a standing desk because you want to be able to focus and do the best work that you can possible. Yeah, that makes perfect sense. Great example there. Yeah, or computer, stronger internet connections, subsidizing transit benefits. Like there are a lot of different things that you could be asking for. Yeah. And if any of you are going through any interview processes or get a job offer and you want to talk about it, my door is always open. I know that your university's career centers are very eager to get you in there talking about salary negotiations and such there too. So always tap into those resources, and our door is open too. And then we'll have this conversation, or the recording and the slides for you to reference, whether you're going through fall recruiting, spring recruiting, just looking for a job a year or two down the line, right? Things are still going to be pretty applicable. So any last comments, questions, concerns? Awesome. Fellows in doing internships in PPNV partner organizations. Claire and I will reach out to you. We want to schedule just quick kind of 15-minute how you're wanting to hear how your internships have been going. I know some of them are going to be in the fall too, so we can then just chatting through what your project was like, what are the highlights, talking about that. So look for those. Reach out to me via email. Linda, do you have a question?
Yes, Izaak, I'm upset with you. You never answer my emails.
For what?
Sometimes I don't know, maybe you don't see them sometimes, but like sometimes I feel like when I email you, you don't like respond.
Was it, and it's to the Globally email?
No, I think so, yeah.
Okay, I'll double check and look. I haven't seen one from you recently.
Okay, thanks.
Thank you. Sorry about that. Any other questions? Okay, cool. Well, we will get this recording off to you, put it on YouTube and get this sent out as well as the slides. Thank you so much for everyone attending, and enjoy the rest of your week.
Thank you.
Yeah, have a good one.